If you stop eating right now, your body will not simply run out of fuel. Over the next 24 hours, it will open one energy reserve after another, alter its hormonal signals, and begin producing fuel that was barely present before. But something else will happen too. One of the internet's favorite claims about fasting will begin to fall apart. This is what actually happens inside your body during a 24-hour fast. For this journey, imagine a generally healthy adult consuming no calories but continuing to drink water. The precise timing will vary depending on the last meal, physical activity, sleep, stored glycogen, and individual metabolism. The transformation begins with your final bite of food. During the first few hours, you are not truly in a fasted state. Your digestive system is still breaking the meal apart. Carbohydrates become glucose. Proteins become amino acids. Fats are packaged into microscopic particles that can travel through the body. As glucose enters the bloodstream, the pancreas releases insulin. Insulin acts like a metabolic traffic controller. It helps cells absorb glucose, encourages the liver and muscles to store some of it as glycogen, and signals that energy is currently abundant. At this moment, your body has little reason to open its deeper reserves. Fresh energy is still arriving from the intestine, but that supply does not last. Several hours after the final meal, digestion begins to slow. Less glucose enters the blood, insulin gradually falls, and the balance between insulin and another hormone, glucagon, begins to change. This is the first handover. Your liver contains a compact reserve of glycogen, thousands of glucose molecules joined together and stored for later use. As external fuel disappears, the liver starts breaking that glycogen apart and releasing glucose into the bloodstream. This helps keep blood glucose within a relatively narrow range, even though no food is entering the body. There is an important detail here. The glycogen stored in your muscles is largely reserved for those muscles. It can help power movement, but it cannot directly maintain blood glucose for the rest of the body. That responsibility falls mainly to the liver. And while this is happening, hunger may suddenly appear. But hunger does not always grow continuously until it becomes unbearable. The hormone ghrelin often rises around the times when you normally eat. This can create waves of hunger that intensify and then partially fade, even if no food arrives. Your brain is not simply measuring an empty stomach, it is also anticipating a familiar routine. That means two people at the same hour of a fast may feel completely different. Now the deeper transition begins. After roughly 12 hours, liver glycogen is becoming increasingly reduced. The exact timing is not universal, but the body can no longer depend on this reserve alone. So it activates another system. Fat cells begin releasing more fatty acids into the bloodstream. Stored triglycerides are separated into fatty acids and glycerol. Many tissues can burn the fatty acids directly, while the glycerol travels to the liver. The liver now performs something remarkable. It begins manufacturing new glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis. Some of this glucose is built from glycerol, some can be produced from lactate that has been recycled through the bloodstream, and some may come from amino acids. Why produce glucose when the body has so much stored fat? Because not every cell can use fat. Red blood cells, for example, depend on glucose, and after only 24 hours, the brain still requires a substantial amount of it. Your body is not abandoning glucose, it is rationing it. At the same time, another fuel is beginning to rise. As the liver processes fatty acids, it converts some of them into molecules called ketone bodies. These include acetoacetate and beta-hydroxybutyrate. Ketones can travel through the bloodstream and provide energy to several tissues. They can also cross into the brain, gradually reducing its complete dependence on glucose. But after 24 hours, you are not necessarily in the dramatic state of ketosis often portrayed online. Ketone levels may be rising, but the adaptations seen during several days of fasting have only just begun. This is a transition, not a completed transformation. Between 18 and 24 hours, insulin generally remains low, fat mobilization increases, and the liver relies more heavily on gluconeogenesis and ketone production. You are now using a greater proportion of stored fat for energy, but here is the trap. Burning more fat during a particular period does not automatically produce large or permanent fat loss. A 24-hour fast creates an energy deficit only if that missing energy is not completely replaced afterwards. Early changes on the scales can also include less food inside the digestive system and water released as glycogen stores fall. They do not represent pure body fat loss. Research comparing intermittent fasting with conventional dietary advice has not found a clear, clinically meaningful weight loss advantage that applies to everyone. Fasting can be a useful structure for some people, but it is not a loophole in human metabolism. And then there is autophagy. Online videos often claim that after 16, 18, or 24 hours, the body suddenly activates a cellular cleaning program. The real biology is far less precise. Autophagy is a recycling process through which cells break down and reuse damaged or unnecessary components. Nutrient scarcity can influence the molecular pathways that regulate it. However, scientists have not identified one universal hour when autophagy suddenly switches on throughout the human body. Much of the detailed evidence comes from cells and animals, and the response can differ between tissues. So a 24-hour fast may alter signals associated with cellular recycling, but claiming that a complete internal cleanup begins at one exact hour goes beyond what human evidence can currently show. What might you actually feel during all of this? Some people report strong hunger, headaches, irritability, dizziness, feeling cold or difficulty concentrating. Others feel relatively normal. The experience can be affected by hydration, sleep, habitual caffeine consumption, physical activity, the previous meal, and medical conditions. This is why a 24-hour fast is not appropriate for everyone. It can be risky for people with diabetes, particularly those using glucose-lowering medication. It may also be unsuitable during pregnancy or breastfeeding for people with a history of eating disorders and for those whose medication or health condition requires regular food intake. This is general scientific information, not personal medical advice. Then, after 24 hours, food returns. Glucose begins entering the bloodstream again. Insulin rises. The liver starts rebuilding glycogen, fat release slows, and ketone production falls. The entire metabolic sequence begins to reverse. Your body has not been detoxified, it has not been reset, and it has not unlocked a secret mode that only appears after one precise hour. What happened was a controlled transfer of responsibility from food in the digestive system to glycogen in the liver, and then increasingly to newly produced glucose, fatty acids, and rising ketones. Your body does not stop when food stops. It reorganizes. A 24-hour fast does not reveal a hidden metabolic superpower. It reveals an ability your body has always possessed, the ability to change fuel before the fuel runs out.